Hi guys, this is Adam with Dr. Kori Propst, and you're here for another Contest Prep University, and really excited about this topic. Today we want to talk about the psychology of dieting at home, and I almost have to laugh about this one a bit because I've had countless clients, and I'm sure you could attest to this also, Kori, who have said, if I could only just work from home all the time, this would be so much easier. Or if I didn't have to take the kids to practice, life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
Well, now we're getting what we wish for, and people are still struggling with their diets.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different paradigm shift to diet from home, have the refrigerator in the house with you 24/7, the pantry, whatever it is, and it's been tough. So I really wanted to go over this topic with yourself because I figure we can offer a lot of insight for people with this.
Sure, absolutely, Adam. I think just right off the bat, the fact that we are so close to food because we are in the house more often makes it that much easier to get. It's, if we look at it on a broader scale, there's so much food available outside of our houses. It makes food that much more available and easy to get, and people are eating more as a result of that. And there have been studies that show just things as simple as, like, at dinner, if you put the food, like if you don't leave all the food on the dinner table, like all the dishes of food that you could get seconds with easily, if you don't leave it on the table, but you leave it in the kitchen and you're eating in the dining room, you have a much lower likelihood to get up and walk the 10 steps to get the food because it's over there. You make it harder. Now, we're talking about people who are generally pretty physically active, and like 10 steps isn't that big of a deal. But when you think about convenience, it really, like, I think about things in my own life where I'm like, if I'm sitting at my desk working and I'm like, oh, that piece of paper is over there on that desk and now I have to turn around in my chair and get out. Like, seriously, it's not that big of a deal, but it psychologically can feel like a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point because I've had clients who struggle with like veggie trays at parties and they're like, I don't even like that. And I've been told them it's not about the veggie tray. It's because the veggie tray is out 24/7 and it's a constant reminder that you potentially could eat this.
Eat it. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we hear it all the time. Don't stand by the food table when you go to a party, or have a glass of water in your hand so you're less likely to go grab a beverage of some sort that's highly caloric or something. But yeah, it's real.
You find to get past this, a lot of it's identifying the why you gravitate to the food, or is it physical hunger? Is it psychological hunger? Is it just pure boredom? Or do you just have an uncontrollable craving? Sometimes this happens. I had a female client who said, when the Oreos were at home only at night when I got home from work, battling that for 4 hours wasn't that big of a deal, but battling it for 24 is a much bigger deal. And I said, you've got to get rid of those things. And there's nothing wrong with just saying, I just don't have the control to have this in my house.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just recognizing what's going to be in our best interest. It's not as if she's saying in that moment, I will never eat Oreos again in my life. It's, this isn't a good time. It's not a good place. With all the additional stressors in my life right now, I'm just that much more likely to grab food to feel better. And there's nothing to be ashamed of about that too. I think where we can get into trouble is in, like, really blaming ourselves and shaming ourselves for maybe wanting to move towards food for some comfort and engaging in a bit of emotional eating. that's not a bad behavior. It doesn't make us bad people for having emotion and wanting to feel comfort. Like we're human. But perhaps there are other foods that could give us that sense of comfort that we don't feel maybe as bad about eating when we do. And then the other thing is to ask if there are other, maybe do an assessment, ask if what is here for me right now? Because I'll tell you, Adam, I've worked at home for a long time. And when I didn't, I would pack all my food and take it to the office. So what was there is what I would eat. And I do find myself gravitating to the kitchen more, working from home. I'm also not pursuing any physique goals at this point, so I probably am actually eating more as well. But I have noticed for myself that it's it's like the transition time between finishing one thing and starting another is when I have that urge to go get something to eat. It's kind of like, oh, you finished it. It's like this little reward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, just being able to, increase our personal level of awareness around those times when we may be not feeling as strong or resilient is really important. Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see that. One of the other big things I'm having discussions with my clients about is them being creatures of habit, which we kind of covered in our last episode. But a lot of my clients stopped packing and planning their food,
Mm-hmm.
and then they started making not so great decisions with their macros, or I don't want to take the time to track this now because I'm like hungry right now. And
Right.
they've had to go back to, even though I'm home 24/7, I really need to pack and plan my food because I will eat it if I make it, or I'll just grab what's convenient. And recognizing that pattern is key, because people can get really caught up in just kind of some stinking thinking and beating themselves up over it. I'm like, where this is really simple. You just pack and plan and you will be good to go for the week. Also, one thing I always tell my clients, when you get out the measuring cup from the drawer once, you save yourself 7 times from doing that the rest of the week. So even though it seems like an hour and a half of meal prep, it really does save you some time in the long run.
And emotional energy too. Because when you think about how much energy is lost from eating something that then we regret eating, and then just the physical, how we feel physically when we've eaten something that we don't even maybe necessarily like, but it's there and it's around and it's out. I mean, that's a lot of energy wasted. So
yeah,
I agree with you. The routine part is a big deal. Pack and plan. I just think of other areas in my own life where a routine is everything for me. From getting up at the same time every morning to, going into the gym at the same time every morning, to getting in that workout every morning, and my entire probably first 3 hours of the day is a routine. Why would I not do the same thing with food? Because how many minutes or hours do I spend a day eating? That's an important part of me and how I feel and how my day is going to go. And for like parents out there, who are, they're not only, well, I think of it this way. Think of your kids and how much better they do when they have a routine rather than, oh, go to bed whenever you want, get up whenever you want. Like if you're tired, when you can eat at this time or that time or whenever, like it's chaos. And children, they don't function well. Not to mention adults, you and me, we don't function well in a chaotic environment like that. We do much better when we know what to expect. And I say that, Adam, and I think about that there's so much in our environment right now where we don't know what to expect. That's the hard part. So if we can think about it from that perspective, what can I put into place at home, food-wise, routine-wise, eating-wise, workout-wise, that can help me feel a bit more certain, knowing what to expect, at least in here, because out here, like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And it can be really helpful.
I'm glad you mentioned chaos. One of my clients was eating with her children, and she said, it's just, I'm mom the whole time. And I said, I would never want to tell a mother not to have a dinner with their children.
Yeah.
But I said, maybe only have a portion of your meal and then have like the rest in your office where you can actually sit down and kind of have a better environment for you to actually enjoy that meal. And just, if you're playing mom, like all of a sudden that meal's gone and you don't even realize you had it.
That's
and
right.
Sometimes it's nice to be alone and just sit down and say, all right, I actually get to enjoy this meal to myself. And you'll just have the initial response of knowing that I did eat that meal and I did get to enjoy it, versus I played mom the whole time. I think I ate, but like my bowl's empty, it's gone.
I hear that a lot from parents too, Adam. And you know what you said made me think about just the concept of mindful eating. And when we're at home and it's easy to go grab the bag of chips or grab the snacky stuff that doesn't end up to be an actually nourishing, satisfying meal, it feels okay in the short term, but then, like, I don't know if people can relate to me this way, but if I have a snack, like if I get a bowl of pita chips or something and I'm munching on that just standing at the counter or while I'm working, then I'm like, well, I need a real meal now. And it's not like I'll modify the real meal because I ate the pita chips. It's like, no, I want my normal nourishing lunch because I love my lunch.
Right.
And so it gets real difficult if we're not planning. If we can set up just sit down with a piece of paper, sit down with your journal and say, you know what, here's how I would like things to look. This would be my ideal day. If I'm with my kids, this is how I would like to approach it. And these are all the things that are important in that situation. You know what? I'm not going to eat standing up at the counter. I'm just not going to do that. Anytime I eat, I'm going to practice sitting down at the table, not with my computer, not with a book, not with my phone, just with my food and anyone else who is eating with me. But we can set up little guidelines for ourselves like that. And if we're in a family and not by ourselves, we can make contests out of it for real. Like, who can be the last person to finish their meal, And we're practicing, like, after every bite, put your fork down. After every bite, take a drink of water. Then you're much more mindful in that situation. You're actually thinking about the taste of that food when you're eating it and the timing of that meal and how your body feels while you're doing it. And you're actually able to probably connect with the people around you instead. And you're not all out here and worried about what's going on. But
yeah, one of my most refreshing parts of the day is where I don't bring my laptop out and I don't bring my phone out for me and my wife's dinners together. And we just say, this is a no phone time period. And, there was a time where I was adjusting to this because I was kind of overworking, we would say. And I would almost hurry through the meal. And it's just as bad as having your phone with you if you're worried about getting to the next thing. So I really try to turn off during that time. And it's one of my most enjoyable parts of the day. It actually makes the meal more meaningful, and it's actually more filling to have your meal that way.
Turning it off and tuning in, like, I think that's a great practice. Can I be present with what is right here in front of me? My meal, this person, you're with your wife. Your wife could totally tell when you are absent and off in work land in your head. She's like, yep, he's gone. He's here, but he's gone.
And what's important to me is to be present while I'm here, right? And not be gone. And, if you can have just a a moment every day where you just kind of soak something in. That's what life is really about. And having those memories are key. And I think we rob ourselves of those because of technology often.
I agree. And we can use our technology to our benefit for things just like that. Adam, I remember this is when I was still in Evansville, and Joe and I were, just right across the hall from each other. And I had this app on my phone, and I can't remember what it was called. I wish I could, but it would randomly go off probably once an hour at random intervals, and it would be this gong sound. And it was a signal to breathe. So you're regrouping in that moment, and you're becoming very present, because we tend to be off in another, we're looking back or we're looking forward while we're working a lot of times. And we're shallow breathing. We're literally hyperventilating most of the time. And so it was a reminder to take a big, deep breath. And I remember when it would go off, I'd hear Joe across the hall just start laughing. Because and I remember it going off in the middle of one of our owner conferences too. And everyone's like, but that's the whole point. It makes you very present. You're you are in the moment when that thing goes off. So I do think that, yes, absolutely, while technology can distract us and get in our way and keep us from being with whoever is with us in that moment, it also we can use it to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I did see on a very sort of present note with COVID, I was listening to Andrew Cuomo give his update for New York. And he said that the state of New York is partnering with Headspace many of the listeners are probably familiar with Headspace. It's a meditation and mindfulness app. A lot of my clients use it to help them go to sleep, or if they just want to center themselves in the middle of the day, but they're partnering with Headspace to offer people some of those mental health benefits through this crisis, which I thought was really cool.
That is really cool. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Of all the things I've read, I did not see that yet.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, I think about it all the time, the mental health effects of this, and, just the sheer amount of anxiety that people are experiencing. And as we come out of it and people are trying to rebuild economically, financially, I don't know anyone who has had someone die, but there are, of course, plenty of people who have, and those individuals are we have a lot of grief work to do to get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now that we've got the mindset down and kind of all the psychological patterns, I think one of the next big, really important things for people to do is time block, because now we have this exponentially long period of time now where we can get things done. I even know I have some side projects I'd really like to get after, and I just haven't, because work can take a little longer when there's just nowhere to be right now. And that's kind of how my schedule used to run. So I do time block. Now I'm time blocking even longer than I used to, because there's more hours in the day that I could be doing things. So I have actually inserted some activity in there, just whether it be yard work, walks, things of that nature. But I think it's really important for our listeners to apply everything we talked about, along with structuring some time periods, like maybe when you eat, when you actually go to bed, because if you don't have to be at work at 7 a.m. anymore because you're working at home, it's really easy to get out of sync with your normal patterns, which can really send you spiraling in a diet environment.
Well, and your biological rhythms,
Right.
circadian rhythms, which have a lot to do with how you eat and your hunger levels. So if you can keep your routine in terms of getting up and going to bed and getting the same amount of sleep, you're really helping yourself out in terms of if your sleep is really affected by this because you're going to bed later, and you've just changed all that around, then yes, we can set up the environment to be as good as it can be to prevent you from doing some like picking and grazing and not planning and things like that. But if it's biological, that's a little bit more difficult to change. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I completely agree with you. On the activity front, I love that, Adam, because, I work with a lot of individuals who struggle with binge eating. They're mainly competitors. They're prepping for shows, and binge eating doesn't stop after the show and after the diet ends. But a lot of times what will happen is a binge can be triggered by any sort of emotion that doesn't necessarily they don't feel like they have another way of coping with it. A binge is protective in many ways because it helps them feel better, but it's not necessarily effective in the long run. So in terms of activity, the binge also let me back up. When we experience emotion, that's literally energy in our bodies in motion, energy in motion. Most people look at emotion as either it's good emotion or it's bad emotion. It's negative or positive. And so in a binge eating situation, we're trying to stop the emotion, change the emotion, assuage the emotion, modify it in some way, right? And avoid it. Well, it's energy, it's moving. It's going to demand that we pay attention to it. But B, if it's already moving, it's in motion, then moving our bodies can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Stopping and eating, it's not, like I said, it's not an effective mode of taking care of ourselves long term. We feel better initially, usually. This is what I, hear from my clients all the time. Yeah, it works. Like I'm immediately feel calmer. But then there's the guilt and the shame but let's, something that we can try to do is recognize that it's there. Like there's a buzziness. And if you notice an urge, to go eat, notice what's going on in your body. Not up here, not what are the thoughts that are driving me to go eat so much, but down here below the neck. Where do I feel that? Where is it? Where's it located? Maybe I can help it move through me instead of stopping it and trying to get away from it. Maybe I could go for a walk, or maybe I could do some jumping jacks. Maybe I could gather the kids together and we could have a game of Twister or something. Mm-hmm. But moving our bodies can be really helpful to allow the energy to move through them as opposed to getting blocked. Because it's going to come, it needs to come out, and it will at some point come out in some way.
Yeah, and I find activity is just great to get those positive endorphins flowing. And yeah. It does take your mind off food. And guess what? When you're outside on a walk, you're away from the fridge, which is helpful too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is all great information. So do you think we have anything else to cover on that? I'm trying to think if we missed anything.
Is there anything else that your clients have brought up to you, Adam?
I had one client who I wanted to run this by you that I thought was pretty interesting. She said the dieting caused her to binge. And I said, well, riding the bike can also cause you to fall off. Are you just going to stop riding the bike forever? Uh-huh. And we kind of discussed that. And it was more just the guilt of having the binge made her feel so bad. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of tried to divide as the psychological hunger stress. We actually did give her a little bit of a food increase to just see if we could kind of put the training wheels back on and get her consistent again.
Yeah, binge eating. I mean, one of the the highest risk factor for binge eating is significant food restriction and dieting. So if anyone came to me with that, Adam, like I know you did, you took it seriously. We want to do a thorough assessment to find out what the factors involved were. And I like that you raised her food levels, because if it was legitimate hunger and just feeling this gnawing sense of I'm not getting enough food, then that could have been the impetus for the binge, of course. And she's just, I mean, our bodies are going to try to take care of us in the best way they know how, which is to prompt eating.
Absolutely. I also, too, with clients like that, I gauge how their communication is with me on probably even how thoroughly they communicate with themselves. And this person doesn't communicate in a whole lot of ways accurately. I think that there's, with younger clients, there's a fear of being vulnerable, obviously, even though this person's paying me for coaching. But, I think they probably could have stuck to their diet, but I said, I'm probably only hearing, 40% of this. So let's go ahead and raise it just in case. So.
And then monitor from there. Yeah, I do. Age makes a difference. Of course it does, in terms of, how we've learned to take care of ourselves and how we've learned to identify and monitor how we're feeling and what we're willing to share with other people. And those individuals who have begun to really look at how they're feeding themselves from a nourishment standpoint, not just food as food, but what it allows them to do in other areas of their lives too, and or how a diet or food restriction is impacting not just their hunger and how their body is changing, but their ability to be functional and to think clearly and to do their jobs well and to be good partners and to be good parents and all of those things. No, I don't know how old your client is, and I don't want to say we won't blame age, but the more a person can become emotionally intelligent and think through these things from multiple perspectives as opposed to just macros, then it's going to go a lot more smoothly. And
I think on my end, it becomes my responsibility to, with this client in particular, asking more questions to almost make them think about it, because their chances are there's a little bit of pain and suffering with those emotions, but we can draw them out and it's not as bad, because she's like, well, he has taught me and asked me these questions, so I have someone along the ride with me to answer these questions and kind of make me think about these things. And that's something I took from you, obviously, but it's been really helpful.
Well, that's great. And I mean, what's happening in that situation is you're helping to draw her out. You're also teaching her the questions she can begin to ask herself when you're not around. So your voice becomes her voice in coaching herself when you're not there for her, which is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is great. So, well, guys, I think that wraps up this episode of Contest Prep University. I want to thank Kori for joining me again, and I'm sure we'll do many more of these in the future.
Yeah, thanks, guys.